I wanted to talk a little bit about how, from a landscape architecture profession, we have to look at each site differently and how we collaborate and how we not only how we make our internal team, but how we pull experts into our different projects. But first, a little bit about how I got into this, and sort of, I think we all have our own path to where we got in our profession. But I grew up in the suburbs of Northeast Ohio. As little kids, there wasn't much to do. We could sit on a swing, go down a hot slide, run around outside, get ready for that great moment where you went from Ohio suburbs to Iowa suburbs and did the same thing, which was that bottom left picture we did every year. And it was a little bit boring, but we discovered the woods. We played in the woods. We pole vaulted over creeks. We built forts. We see who could stand on the ice the longest and always went home with wet shoes, climbed trees. That was our haven. We were lost. It was our way to play. Then something even bigger happened. We got BMX bikes. We were free. We could go anywhere we wanted. We were allowed to move around. And then my mom came out and said, within 2-block radius of the house. So this big open expanse got really small. Luckily for us, like a lot of suburban developments at the time, there were some lots that hadn't been developed. And there was a corner lot that was between my two friends' house. And someone had dumped a pile of dirt there. There was a bunch of still trees that were there from when it was woods. And we took it over, and we, being 8-year-old kids, we called it the corner. So we hung out on this corner lot, and it's where we did all kinds of stuff. We were going to make the best BMX bike track anyone had ever seen. 4 8-year-olds armed with their dad's shovels, we went out. We learned earthwork by moving dirt around with shovels. We made berms and learned about super elevation. We learned about drainage, which in my profession is to move water away from things. We funneled it all into the center where the jump went over, and if you missed, you came home muddy. So for us, this was like our exploration, and we learned about distance, how long things needed to be from each other. It was great. It was our corner. I had the woods, which was this natural area in this corner that could be programmed and used. Fast forward some years later, I had to go to work. 16 years old, it was time to get a job. My mom was cut from the cloth that it's called work for a reason, Paul. It had to be hard, it was supposed to be tricky, and it was something. So I took it head on. I started working from 8 to 12 in the morning at a butcher shop, across the street, worked from 12 to 8 at a gas station, where I was told I was management material. And then, I guess that's, first sign. And took it on, and I went home that night, and I just remember thinking, man, I better find something I like to do, because this work takes up a lot of time. Fast forward, in the first year of college, kind of bumpy, wasn't that great. My mom comes out, and she says, hey, what do you think about landscape architecture? And I said, well, I don't know what I think about it. What is it? And she started to describe it to me, and I said, well, that sounds really cool. And she said, oh, good, because I signed you up. You're going to Ohio State University. It closed yesterday. And I was like, okay, like who could do that? Well, mom could do that, basically. So fast forward 50 years later, or as my 13-year-old daughter says, geesh, it's like half a century. I found something I like to do. I love it. It's not what I do, but it's also who I am. I work for MVVA. It's a company that my boss, Michael Van Valkenburg, started over 40 years ago that was based off of garden design. And it started as a garden design firm because that was really what was available to the profession. It quickly turned into campus work. We did the restoration of Harvard Yard, and it spanned into us working in 30 or 40 different campuses over the life of the firm. Then something happened. Big public projects were coming out, and they were being run by landscape architects, whereas previously we were usually with an architect, and we did the landscape around it. We called it parsley around the pig. And so now we're in charge of the parsley and the pig, and we've got these sites that no one wanted because they flood. That site on the left is, in 1989, we started in Columbus, Indiana, and the entire thing floods. And it's supposed to not only be a park, but have that redundancy and resiliency to be able to deal with things. As things move forward, bigger projects came along. This was my baby. I worked on it for 20 years. It's Brooklyn Bridge Park. The Port Authority in New York could not wait to get rid of this property. It was maintenance for them, millions of dollars being sunk into the ground, and we were able to take this public park from what was just asphalt and pier sheds and turned into where events could happen with the backdrop of Manhattan. It wasn't too hard to make it spectacular, but have these events. We took old pier sheds, turned them into recreation facilities that were missing in Brooklyn. And a park that when we started this in 2000, where people said no one will come, 5 million people come here between Memorial Day and Labor Day every year. We keep still doing campus work. This is Cornell, an old parking lot turned into a plaza at the crossroads of many different places where students can move through to go to their classes, stop, meet friends, have a chance to bump into folks. And I think all of us have a memory when we shut our eyes of our college. That's very important for us when we do this. I mean, I can close my eyes and still see the Oval at Ohio State. So this is rewarding for us in that this is something that carries with people. And we still do residential work. It reminds us of the human scale. It keeps things at a point where when you're doing a job that's for 5 million people, you have to remember the individual. We're now over 100 people in 4 offices. We've built over 1,300, designed and built over 1,300 projects in the US. And at any time, I have about 100 active jobs happening at once. So how do we create a process that takes all of these individual projects, different sites, different program requirements, different budgets, and turn that into an individual project that is not only for the end user what it needs to be, but fits in with all those ramifications of running a project in a business. So I love going to work. The people we have in our office, they're my friends. We are all on the same mission. And a part of that steps back as senior people where when we're hiring people, we got to look for people who might actually be better at something than we are. We're not looking to repeat, and it'll make a little bit more sense when I go through our process. We're not just looking to add more, Pauls into the mix. That's not what we want. We want people who are going to become experts in things and find their own way within the profession. We're messy. Someone described our office as Santa's workshop once, which I guess was kind of nice. I mean, good things come out of that. But we need the permission to contribute. This is very important. And how we do this is we have a lot of meetings with younger people, senior people, and they all get to interact. This permission to contribute and be a part of the conversation does for us, which is what we think is our secret sauce, is our collective knowledge. All of these pieces of information get added on. People go back and forth. There's arguments. There's, moving of things. There's quick drawings that happen. And not only are younger folks exposed to this, but they're expected and told that the end result is that they're also contributing. Our office, or our projects started a concept design, go through a series of other design phases, and then end in a technical drawing set that then the contractor can build, and we do the construction administration. Getting people away from their desks and just logging in their hours and showing them actually how these things happen, whether it's having people up in the model shop. This is a large model of the Dallas Trinity River that we worked on years ago, and having people come in and see it and us explain what's going on, getting people to a marble quarry in Vermont and understand how this all works, going to tree nurseries so we understand how time needs to be added into having the trees delivered, how we're getting things there, and having folks come to construction sites. All of that fosters, I think, this idea that you can sit at your computer and have things stuck in there, but you actually are starting to see how they come out in the real world. An iterative approach, this is also key to our design phase. Every project has its own set of conditions, climatic, issues. This is in Detroit on the waterfront, has waterfront, constraints, issues. Are we doing, hydrology? What are we doing with the water? What program does the client want? What's the budget? And when we have a back and forth with people, and we have this thing that we're keep tugging and pulling and having these conversations, especially at the beginning of projects where you're really trying to figure out what the big idea is, this iterative approach is key not only to us maybe poking around corners that we wouldn't have looked at before because we thought, well, we have an idea, we're going to just run with this. The worst thing you can do in our profession, I think, is to have an idea and then spend the rest of the time defending it. You have to be able to say, maybe this isn't so good, or hey, the budget just changed, or oops, our client just said they want 2 more buildings with bathrooms in it. That has to all be ready to be moved back and forth in order to create a successful project. We have a huge model shop. We still build all of our projects, and we try not to look at any project through one lens. So we have these different uses. This is a project in Buffalo, New York, where it's a 110-acre park. We're restoring it, and in the middle of that is Destination Playground. It's about a 5-acre playground, and it's meant to be the woods in the corner, in my mind, growing up, how kids can play and be imaginative rather than be told to sit on a swing and have someone push them. On Lake Erie, which is where the park is, there's these amazing freighters that move back and forth along Lake Erie. So our inspiration was to take this freighter and have it be something that the kids could actually interact with. So we built a model, and you could see that we built a tugboat instead of a freighter. And so we backed up and said, well, let's think this through a little bit. So we went out, this is outside my office, and we mocked up exactly how big the freighter would be in chalk. And you can see it's 150 feet long, it's 20 feet wide. It's the size of my property in Brooklyn. And I kept thinking that. I'm like, I have kids running through here, and what are they going to be doing? And then we tested it with VR and said, let's make sure that the scale of this is right, not only for kids, but for caregivers who are going to be there and interacting. So looking through things through different lenses on a different project type is key to what we do to be able to stay within those guardrails of the process that we're creating. Our people work long hours. We don't ask them to. They're invested. They're in it. They come to work every day happy. They make their own relationships. Even people we have virtual, we have them come back often so they get to hang out with folks. And there's a hierarchy in the firm, of course. Like that's how firms have to run, whether we like it or not. But the process, the hierarchy is sideways. We have studio assistants that are helping with things, giving ideas to designers, to the partners, and everyone's having that conversation. And that back and forth allows us to continue to have our internal staff working together and also admiring each other, which is key. Outside collaborators, we're kind of one of the last generalist professions, I feel like. Like we as landscape architects know the big vision, but we don't know how the water from the Lake Erie is going to work, and we need a hydrologist. We're going to need to talk to architects about building the buildings. We need marine engineers and geotechs. And so we look at building our team, and how do we do that is we create relationships with these people, and we bring them in, not to give them the item to figure out the solution, but to be a part of the conversation. If we're talking to someone about river ecology, what are the opportunities here? What do we need actually for hydrological flow? If we're sitting around a large model where we're going to be doing development parcels are a big part of it for making that money, how do we have all of these different people continuing to participate in this conversation and feel ownership, not just figuring out the solution? Okay, this almost lost our biggest commission to us. This was in our RFP that we sent in to the client. And it was for Brooklyn Bridge Park, and I look at it every once in a while, and I was looking at it when I was putting this together to talk to you all, and I finally got it. I was like, what the hell is that? As I just kept looking at it. I was going to print it and put it on the wall because my boss made it, but I figured I was stepping into wrong territory. This is about not only us being in the center of this, navigating and connecting all these dots and pulling things together. This is about our collaborators on the outside having their own relationships. Not always funneling back through us, but having your architect being able to talk to your engineer, having your hydrologist talking to your ecologist and going back to your civil engineer. And although this is crazy looking, it's actually a very good representation because it's confusing and you have to work at it and make sure these relationships are formed. So ultimately, all of our projects are for people, and a lot of them are for the public. So we have a large community engagement process that we do through the beginning of the process and all the way through. When I started in the office, I worked did a couple residential projects on Martha's Vineyard, and I met this mason who build stone walls. He was also a poet. And he would take me around. He's like, look at that stone wall right there. And I was like, yeah. He's like, see how all the rocks are resting? Like they feel like they're comfortable from the ground? I said, yeah. And they took me another one, and someone had done something. He's like, those stones are scared. That's not what we want in a stone wall. Our parks are the same. Most good parks you go into, you don't even know you're going into something designed. You're coming into something that's comfortable. You're coming into something that makes your blood pressure drop. You're going somewhere to relax and escape whatever you're doing on a daily basis. So asking the right questions of people is key. If you ask anyone what they want, they're going to give you something tangible. But if you ask them actually how they use the space, what is missing, what do they think the opportunities are that they could see them doing on a weekend. If you ask broader questions, and we get this information and we're able to digest that versus, I want a basketball court. And so a big part of this public process for us is taking that woods I talked about and making that feel like it's sunk into the park experience, and then carving out the corner and having that program and that work all happening within there. So we still have to meet recreational uses, we still have to have basketball courts, but we want to be able to still have the layer over that being the park and the landscape itself. So how do we do this? This is the thing that I think is, from the design side, our sort of special sauce. And this is kind of a saying that makes a lot of young people in our firm upset, but hurry up and finish that drawing so I can change it. We are constantly looking at how do we push back and forth. And this rapid fire back and forth and making younger people nervous, these things get sent out to our collaborators. They get discussed within the firm. If you have something stagnant and you're just looking at it and you're trying to figure out how to make that solution, you're missing the opportunity to make it better. And from the business side, because this process is not the same for every project, there's a guide, we call it a loose-fitting straitjacket. There are areas with which you can move from. You put that jacket on a different project and you look at it and you think of it individually. But that allows us to be more nimble on the type of work we're doing. During 2008, we actually grew because our project types were so widely varied. We had developer work that they all pumped the brakes. But we had universities who had, endowments larger than other countries' GDP, and they kept going because they didn't care. They were going to ride it through. And so that and being nimble and being able to switch what we do, change things, actually allowed us to grow through that recession. So I heard there's a St. Louis mafia here. Yeah, I guess that intel was right. So in summary, I just want to give 4 points to think about. And I know everyone's profession is different, but from our perspective, the first thing we do is we lean into the messiness, the openness. It's nerve-wracking. Even for me, I've been doing this almost 30 years. There's a lot of back and forth. There's moments where you're still wanting things to move forward. You got a schedule, you got a budget, you got a client you have to talk to. But leaning into that and letting it and embracing it and having it be part of the process is key. Also, the first idea, don't treat it so precious. Things are going to change. We're constantly, changing, looking at things. Sometimes you got to start over, take a 180, pivot. The first idea is not always bad, but it's not always the best, and it's probably going to change through the whole process if you are allowing that back and forth in conversation to happen. Third, and this is more technical, but set up a lot of meetings, a lot with your staff, like what we do with our staff and with our sub-consultants. Those meetings provide ownership. They allow people to continue, and maybe an engineer is used to getting something and filling in the rebar and drawing that up and giving it back to you. But now they're a part of this process on what would be a better way to do that? How can we save money doing that? What are some more effective and efficient ways? And the last is just, for us, we know it's going to take more effort, it's more work. It's basically the extra effort and time that we put into that is what we think makes our projects unique to different sites. And so, and timing is the last thing I'll say. We're not done until the time's up. That's sort of just the way our office works. That's also nerve-wracking, but it's part of the process. But I feel like if you follow, from our office, we follow these 4 tips, and we go from something like this at the St. Louis Arts Grounds to something that we've created for the people and connecting back to the city and making St. Louis, a better spot along the waterfront. So I've really been looking forward to this talk. I've had a great time. It was great meeting a lot of you, and I appreciate the opportunity to be up here. So thank you very much.